our values into this software, and it can optimize the trees while they're still standing in the forest. So we could actually tell you how much volume of lumber and grades will come off a block before it's cut, which is very powerful for industry as far as knowing, you know, the bottom line at the end of the year and what their plan is. They can, before they even start cutting, saying this is how much money we're going to make off of these cuts this summer, and these are the amount of, you know, very closely the amount of grades we're going to get off of these blocks. And so the idea there is, again, this is one of our images that we create in our software that we have, and it's to optimize saw patterns with the highest value in it. Okay, so this shows a map. This is for large specific gravity across northwestern Ontario, and here's that sort of that S that they talk about in the central of northern Ontario, because you've got influences from the prairies here and here from the lakes, which creates different growing zones. So if you want, if you're going to make particle board and you want lighter weight tamarack, you're not going to set up over in this region because the density is too high for the actual codes that the maximum density for OSB or those types of panel products. So you might want to harvest in this region. And of course, within it, you're going to have some variance, but on average, the density is lower over here than it is here, and it varies. And we're creating maps like this for all our properties to say, if someone comes in and says, we need high density large for our particular product, we're going to say, oops. We're going to say, well, you should be setting up shop somewhere over in this region, not in this region, because it doesn't have the properties you're looking for. And then you can tell them exactly, you know, what companies have licenses, who do you need to work with. And if it's an undervalued species, it's obviously a bit easier to get access, because if they're not being used by the big mills, there may be a good swapping or trading opportunity there for the small guys. Okay? So we can create these types of maps, which is a nice, a gross landscape map, if you will, but we go right down to the individual trees. And another thing for industry as well as value adders coming to the region and how we can promote the forest, this is part of the new FRI, and this has a polygon here, this large green one here, saying this is basically a forest type. It's the same. Okay, we went in and with one of our big producers up here, we went in and mapped this using our system. Lo and behold, it's not all one forest type. It goes right from as low as pulpwood up to number 2 grades. Okay, so you have a huge difference across the landscape. And the way we do things, and this is what we're trying to get into the FRI, is that we can very specifically tell you where the good lumber and where the grades are. And so if there's a high demand in your forest management plan for the year, if there's a high demand for, you know, number 1 or number 2 and better as far as our stud mill goes, well, they know avoid this patch early when the market demand is high and finish that cutting later on. But you can react to market demand very quickly, or again, at least it tells them what they have on the landscape, and then with this, they can schedule their planning a bit better too, maybe. Okay, this is an example of a project we did for a group. They sent us some wood. We had no control over where they harvested their trees from to do this for them. At the end of the day, you can see the grades aren't that great, but we found out afterwards, you know, a couple of the trees were cut down basically in the ditch on the side of the road. The age variance was from about 20 years old to 100, and you know, they said, well, they all are about the same size. But as you can see, there's a huge variation. Age is one of those things. So we produced this, and then we redid it with some of the forest that was further off the road, more representative. And of course, we produced the maps with the grades, and the investor company, this is exactly what they needed to convince themselves to make the investment, and it would match the products that they wanted to ship for an overseas market. And they were not willing to go forward and tell that. So hopefully this side of information will help them make that decision. And we can do this. This is how we produce things. We can say, this is like the last map. These are the grades. This is what you can expect. Okay, so this is an example of, unfortunately, a company that was in Thunder Bay that didn't make it, using our birch up here. And they came up and we offered to produce maps for them to tell them where the quality is they needed. And unfortunately, they didn't take us up on it early enough. By the time they did, they were already on their way down. But for white birch, we've done intensive work showing the variation within the stem, and more importantly, where on the landscape the properties they required were. They thought they could cut birch anywhere and it would produce a food grade product. Well, food grade can have no hardwood. And so basically, they have to stay away from base of the slope, toe of the slope, mid slope. The best wood for what they wanted was on the ridge tops. And so we created maps This is a map of the dog mat forest up here, and as you can see, there's some of these colored areas. It doesn't show up as good. Oops, doesn't show up as good here, but there's green, like patches that are brown and green. The deep colors on the light green and the brown here, they are layers that we put in for elevation, because we said the best wood is on the higher ridge tops. So we put an elevation layer in saying where on the FRI is there wood at high elevation, greater than 50 or 70% birch composition. We created this map, and as it turns out, then on top of it, we put a forest management plan for the harvesting of that summer. And there was people working, particularly down in this area in the summer, that they would have needed it to get there. So I mean, it was if they'd taken this map, we still might have that company running in this town, but unfortunately they were hauling wood out of the US. Just quickly go over this. We're trying to now working with a local consultant to try and actually bring LiDAR into it and see if we can use aerial LiDAR as a means of mapping wood properties at a landscape scale. So we just started a project. We've had a bit of success. This is that same block I showed you with the things. These are some of our maps that we can produce 3D. So we're still working, and we're actually moving into a big project because we figured out some stuff in this, and hopefully we will be able to use LiDAR to put wood quality on our maps. So summarize that, you can get up to 25% increase in value. Trees aren't just milled and graded out at a mill. Properties dictate where we use them. Wood users receive what they need, and of course inherent properties can help in decision-making processes for product potential, which is sort of what we like to do when we help people. So new products, obviously when you're looking at a value-added product, knowing that you can map stuff, some of the main things: does it meet a market need? Does the product utilize the raw resource efficiently? If not, can you find someone to utilize what you don't use? Does it have do you have the know-how to produce the product? Do you know the distribution channels? Significant development required, the cost of that. Is it protected under patents? Can you access these things? Are you close enough to markets? And do you have an established company with a reputation? All these sort of things need to be answered in order to move products forward. And these are the sort of things you should look at before you start producing a manufacturing facility or stuff like that. Okay, these are just some pictures. These are large-scale products, obviously, glue lam, Paralam products. This is something with our code changes. I don't see why we don't have a facility like this in Ontario producing glue lam. We're going to need it with our 6 stories. So this is an opportunity for us. CLT, cross-laminated timbers. Okay, the tallest wood building in the planet is in Melbourne, Australia. It's 10 stories tall, made out of cross-laminated timber. This is a high-value product. They sourced their CLT from Austria, and it was economical to bring it across the globe. So these are products that you don't have to sell regionally. They can be sold globally, and you still make money on them. And CLT is fantastic. It's basically plywood on steroids. You use 2x6s and you cross-laminate it to make panels 3, 5, 7, 9 wide. And there's an architect in Vancouver, Michael Green. He's designed a 30-story CLT building. He's trying to get approval to put it up as a demonstration, which would be absolutely awesome if it works, or if you can do it. There's a group over in Austria who's designed a 40-story wood building. Okay, so this is part of the way of the future, and it's going to be a big boost for our industry because there's a lot of wood required in these. And they don't need the highest grades as well, which is nice. So when you're building a product, this is also important for when it comes to shipping. Sensory appeal. People like wood products. How does it look? Is it rugged? Can it easily be handled? Is it durable for shipping and handling, what have you? Workable? Is it a comfortable thing? So, everyone loves wood because it's got that really nice feeling in rooms and what have you, like in here. It looks much nicer with wood than it would just say with drop ceilings and white, panels. Is it a safe thing? Is it uniform? Properties. All these tests can be done and tested, and this will help towards marketability. Okay? Obviously, raw materials. You say, well, where do you get the raw materials? You can source these from mills, either as raw lumber and you reprocess it, or as lumber kiln from mills. Source it yourself if possible. Oversized saw logs that mills may make tight, short logs, crooked logs, burls and branches, make very high value furniture products. Different species not typically utilized or undervalued woods. There's a lot of opportunity in those areas. Scrap from operations and manufacturing facilities, old buildings, recycled wood. You'd be amazed how much people will pay for recycled wood floors compared to new floors. They pay more. So there's that feeling people like. Other products, furniture, flooring, these are some of the mid-range types of products that are very possible to make, and they can be very high value. This is a table made out exclusively of burls. you know, thermally modified flooring, outdoor furniture, these sorts of things, using portable mills up to big mills. So a lot of small value adders are very competent to use small processing facilities, which of course lowers costs and overhead costs. Very small niche market products, things like, you know, boards, using small bits of wood, moldings, little boxes. This guy carves things, you know, using a mill that turns and produces certain posts, log homes. These are all opportunities. And if you know your resource, you could produce some of these. But again, these are very based on the properties of the wood supply. And then there's specialized items, furniture, or instruments, things like guitars and that. And you don't even have to make the whole product. There's people who have been very successful who produce components for products. So you may only make a part of it and ship that to another group that produces it together. And we have examples of that in the north. So I mean, you don't have to build an entire product to do value adding. You could build components that are part of a bigger piece of something. Okay, and then there's the energy area. We know there's pellet plants going up here. Pellet stoves are becoming popular. Our generating stations are moving to it. So, you know, there's that area for maybe not particularly value adding, but opportunities for harvesting, processing, and what have you for communities, and that sort of thing. And then there's specialized products, things like, if you've ever seen how much a birch bark canoe goes for in southern Ontario? Between $8,000 and $10,000 for a custom-made birch bark canoe. So, if I was good at making them, I'd be producing them and sending them down south. Other things, you know, you get variety snowshoes, traditional snowshoes, custom-made paddles. This is one of my students. He sells these things in southern Ontario anywhere from $200 to $500 per paddle. In the Muskoka Cottage Country region, they will pay whatever for something, so they go paddle in their nice cedar strip canoe or what have you. So they're niche markets, but they're valuable niche markets. And the trick with this is, if you produce this, you need market channels. You can't sell all this locally. You won't make money. You can sell some, but you also need to move it to places where the market is. And the market for these sort of things in Ontario is in southern Ontario. There's a lot of money and a lot of people want this stuff. Okay, and this is our last slide. Just to finish up, obviously, you saw on every slide, wood is good. That's the logo of my group. But this just shows, this is an FP Innovation slide, and the Canadian Wood Council has done similar things. Wood, 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 compared to other materials. Wood is obviously the cleanest and greenest material that we can use for products. It's renewable, and on top of that, it looks nice, both growing as a tree and as a wood product. So I mean, wood is the way we should be going in as many products as we can, and of course, in Northern Ontario, we should be promoting it because it is still a backbone of our industry. And with that, if it takes too long, I'll answer any questions. And I should say, if anyone does have any, ideas about value adding or that, you're more than welcome to come contact us at the university. We work with lots of groups, and we're happy to provide information we have on the resources we've mapped to help people move forward.
Do you think that the analysis of the site location of certain species that are what the mill wants is going to affect selection of regeneration for certain sites? Like if you harvested a certain species off the site, but you know that that site would be better for, say, jack pine of the kind, that you want for that mill, do you think that's going to affect regeneration plans?
I think that would be probably more ministry territory to state that, but I mean, it could say that if certain sites are prone to producing high quality, then we would want to manage them for that particular species, yes. And this sort of stuff will tell us where the best properties grow, and then we could, focus more management into those areas if required, yeah.
Thank you. I'm Tom Anderson, Forestry Information Officer for Grand Council Treaty 3. It's a very enlightening presentation. The only kind of concern or kind of danger I see is this might have the potential to, say, start a bidding war, because with all this information here, you have companies, big companies, people with money here that can see where the most desirable wood is, where the high value wood is, so they have a bidding war, or this would become more desirable than, say, marginal stand or marginal wood forest. So it's good to have this information and everything, but at the same time, when you have that, all that knowledge and information of where the best wood is, where the best products are, I just see that there's a little bit of a risk there.
Somebody mentioned that before. Does this give people the ability to high grade?
Absolutely.
Essentially. Well, I mean, companies will still have to abide by all their management plans and their annual allowable cuts and everything else. It just means that if there's a high demand for the top grades, they may want to move their operation there and then go back to what they were doing just so they can meet demand. But it also means we can promote, especially our undervalued, we can promote it to new companies coming in saying this is where the undervalued species are, which the big companies tend not to use. So it would allow them to set up in the right area and know where they should be cutting to get their product. But it also means that big companies can say, you know, they cut everything up because they have to. But if there's an opportunity to say, well, we want these bottom 3 logs, but the top logs might be more appropriate that these guys mill, get mills starting to communicate and trade wood so that the mill can put the best value on it, we'll take it, and then, you know, they can start moving wood that way if they're willing to do that. But it opens up the doors for that sort of move. But I thought about that when we did this project, and I mean, everybody still has to abide by all regulations that the ministry sets as far as harvesting and annual level cuts and everything else. So they can't go in and just cut the best and leave the rest. They will have to cut what their plan says. It just allows them to meet market demand more quickly, or recognize that there's extra pockets of wood on their landscape that they don't use. Maybe they could sell it to another company, you know, offset costs and stuff like that. Or when they're harvesting, we'll harvest it for them. We don't need it, but we will harvest it for someone else who's going to pay.
So if they're ethical and good corporate citizens, we can expect to see that. Another question I had was this cross-laminated timber.
Yep.
That can use marginal wood and everything as well? It doesn't have to be high-quality wood for that?
Basically, you need number 2 and better on your outside, which are, you know, your compression and tension sides of the panels. The center wood can be lower grade, which is similar to glue lamp products and stuff like that. So yeah, number 2 and better is the top grade you need for these products. So you don't need select structural and stuff like that.
Very good, thank you.
Have a question? Have you hooked up, I saw that hooking it up to the LiDAR, but I was just thinking about the Alps drones on the other side of this wall here. Have you connected that on the, you know, for the micro scale and this, that level of, I guess, pilot?
Well, I guess when Alf gets his up with his LiDAR on it, we'll have to look at that. But I mean, yes, you could do it at a small, and I've also, my group has a small drone as well, one of the quadcopters, that we plan on using for that exact reason, at smaller scales, to get imagery above where we're working at a smaller scale, and then transfer that across landscapes. But yeah, I can see drones being quite useful in what we do as well.
Any other questions? Yeah, here we go. And, all right, Alf is on deck.
I just wanted to support what Mathew was saying and your concern about high grading. So 15 years ago, Forestry were doing a allowable cut and say, you can cut 1,000 acres per year of jack pine. So they would look at the maps and they would say, they would know where the best jack pine is according to the maps. This is site class 1 jack pine, 80 years old. So that's what will be harvested. So now the ministry has changed the harvest calculation procedure, and you can cut 200 acres of the best jack pine of 80, and you can cut 300 of jack pine, 100 years old, site class 2. So it's all regulated by age, species, age, and site class. So you can't high grade anymore. It's all regulated that way. And then your harvest levels are monitored by the Crown, and you have a 5-year allocation, and you can only cut that 5 years of wood in that 5 years. You could cut it faster, but that's all you've got. So you might think they're overcutting, but they're not. They may speed it up, but they only have 5 years, and it's regulated by site and age class and species. So it's highly regulated now.
Alf wants.
The question I have is, my name is Alf, by the way, I work with Leitch at the university. How competitive are we with these technologies compared to the other boreal regions of the world? Are we up to the same level of standards of the Russians and the Scandinavians, and where are we at?
Well, we had, as you know, we had some Swedish groups through our labs. We had Finnish and Swedish groups through our labs recently before Christmas. And when we showed them, not this presentation, but one similar that had a bit more detail about the mapping and what have you, the first word out of their mouth was, when can we get this? Because we've just started a new process in Sweden to map our forests. And he said, we're going to try to develop something like this, but you guys have already done it, so when can we get access to this? So as far as I can tell, we're leading the way in this particular technology for mapping trees. Nobody I've seen has come close to, especially with the accuracy, because of the number of trees we've sampled. Nobody's come close to what we're doing yet. And we sort of think outside the box the way we do things, which has allowed us to move where other people have stumbled. So I think we're leading the way in this particular research.
These days, whenever somebody comes up to me and talks about value added, we want to get the value added. Seems everybody wants to make wood pellets. You know, that's what's needed. There's a biomass plant coming up. There's a demand for wood pellets. Nobody comes up to me and says, I want to make violins. In comparison to wood pellets and the product you've done, how would you rate the potential of the wood fiber going into sort of, the question I guess would be, is wood pellets the best use, automatic best use, or is it a lower end use to maximize your profits out of the wood? I mean, again, all I hear is wood pellets. That's all everybody's talking about these days.
No, wood pellets, I mean, I always say wood pellets are, in my mind, are equivalent to raw pulp. It's a very low value product to be producing from trees. If you use the leftover waste, the crowns and stuff like that we can't process, I think that's a good resource for pellets. Sawing like full trees down and taking the logs and grinding them into pellets, I think that's undervaluing the trees. And we could make a lot more money by sawing those trees and then taking the waste and pelletizing it. That's my opinion, but I don't think we should be sawing logs in order to make pellets. I think that's undervaluing our forest, and all our studies show that's not the highest value product that we put. Pellets, to me, if you have nothing else to use the fiber for, you can pelletize it. But other than that, there's higher value products we can put wood into, as far as I'm concerned.
How would a First Nation who has taken over a tenure and has wood supply and wants to maximize their operations, how do they access your research group?
Well, I mean, they just contact me, and like
Are they paying you fees? That's what I'm getting at here.
Well, we've done this for some groups too, and I mean, there's funding available that we can do it as promotion for development through the economic development corporations and stuff like that. And with the amount of data, depending where they are, we could already very easily take their resource and map it based on our data. And if we had to do a bit more intensive, we may have to go in and do a few acoustic measurements type thing, take a few cores. But otherwise, I would recommend mapping their resource to find out exactly what they have before they make any decisions. Because I mean, they may be underselling their resource significantly.
I can think of 19 million cubic meters could probably be optimized map.
Yeah. And then it also, when we map it, it also said we could come up with some products they may have never thought of that are feasible for them to produce and marketable. And there is, like, I mean, the main thing is there a market?
Yeah.
There's lots of great ideas, but if no one's going to buy it, it doesn't really matter if it's a great idea.
All right. Well, I think we should put our hands together for Matt. It was fantastic.